We're going to start in the south. Rafah is still the main battle space now into the fourth month here. You could see this map here of Gaza. We talked a lot about the massacres that were happening in the north, because the bombing raids and the shelling and the massacres don't match to the battlefields. As we know, the battlefields are cleared, and the fighters don't fight among people. So when people are being massacred in the schools in Gaza City, that is not a battlefield. What I'm going to cover for the next half an hour, 40 minutes is going to be the battlefield. And we're going to start in Rafah. There's a few maps here that I want to show. Maybe map X here. My numbering's a little confusing today, but just to give you an idea, this is the United Nations UNISAT, the United Nations satellite agency. Those red dots are airstrikes and destroyed buildings throughout Gaza. And we've been showing these maps. I try to bring them in every couple months to just show how disgusting and all-encompassing this genocide is, and the destruction level in Gaza. We're talking about a 361 square kilometer area that has 156,400 buildings destroyed, 88% of the industrial and business facilities destroyed, more than 400,000 housing units, and then 70% of Gaza has been laid to waste, with 82,000 tons of bombs, which is 5 times the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, which was just the anniversary of it in this past week. So in a tiny, closed off, besieged area, 82,000 tons of bombs. It's just criminal. We know it's criminal, but when you look at a map like that, especially when you look at the north, and also to take into consideration the agricultural land has all been destroyed on the buffer zones as well. And those red concentrations are a heat map, so they're not individual strikes. There's many strikes in those dots. So let's take a look at map B, because we're going to zoom in and focus on Rafah to start here. And again, this map holds up now. We're into the fourth month of this map holding up, because the main battle space is still along the Philadelphia corridor. This is the strategic corridor that Israel is fixing to hold on to, and has been the focus of their operations in Rafah. And the main fighting, there was an operation in the east of Rafah, but the main battle space is in Tel Sultan, which is on the western edge of Rafah that you see there, and right along the corridor. And the thing about the Philadelphia corridor, which is different than the Netzarim corridor, is that it's densely populated along the Philadelphia corridor. And this is something that this is a Zionist dream, to have this corridor be expanded. And they used to be, their goal was 400 meters. The Zionist dream was 800 meters. And now what we're looking at is well above a kilometer wide. And you can see on this next map tomorrow, if we do map Y here, you can see the concentrations of the airstrikes along the border and the demolitions. Not all airstrikes. They're wiring up buildings and blowing them up. But you can see clearly what's happening. That yellow line is the border with Egypt. Down in the bottom third there, where you see that space, that's the Rafah crossing that's been closed. No patients, virtually nobody has left. There's been a couple of delegations of cancer patients that got out in small numbers, but there's tens of thousands of people needing medical care that are not getting out that border crossing. And you can see the way that the Philadelphia corridor is being constructed by Israel using this satellite map. You can see what's happening on the ground. And then if we just do Z here tomorrow, you can see just a quick one before and after, because you just want to know what it looks like. This is what it looks like when you just erase neighborhoods, entirely erase neighborhoods. And that's what they've done with the Philadelphia corridor and with this area of Rafah. Israel said Rafah invasion was going to be a few weeks. We're now halfway into the fourth month. And so, again, the resistance making the job of the Israeli genocide project much more difficult, and continuing to fight on. So let's look at number one here. This is we have a number of complex ambushes this week. This is the George Street 4-stage ambush. It's dedicated to the name of Abu al-Abed Haniya, Ismail Haniya, the prime minister and leader of Hamas Politburo. The commander talks about the four elements of the ambush here. And again, the commander is able to communicate. Rafah, again, hand delivering weapons here, hand delivering a shock device to the back door of a Namr troop carrier. Rafah's been the lead in this type of delivery, the hand delivered weapons. They're doing it regularly to great effect, and you can see them do it here. This guy in his bare feet just busts out, drops it in the exact spot that it's supposed to be, and hits the Namr troop carrier here. In this spot, just as the commander said. Now, the commander said the reinforcements would come through this predictable route after that strike, and there he is, just like they planned. One of the reasons, so this is a Yasin 105 strike from an elevated firing position down onto a Merkava tank. And one of the reasons why the routes are predictable is because of intelligence and reconnaissance by the fighters, but also because of the destruction by Israel that makes routes blocked by rubble. So there's a barrel bomb. That's stage 3. The tank proceeds right into the barrel bomb. The barrel bomb is a bomb that's filled with TNT from unexploded ordnance, which is also going to be a theme of this week. And we have a second Namr here. You can tell the difference. The screen, the pergola, the cope cage, the drone cage on the top is bent. You see different markings on the tail. And in the field reports, they talked about 2 Namrs, and that's also the next day when that one goes off. So yeah, let's just look at this one more time. You see a detailed map on the ground, on the table there. You see the fighters reading a book about the liberation of Palestine, using reflections from the Surat al-Isra. Fighters reading books about liberation on the table there, again dedicated to Haniya, which has been a theme for the last 2 weeks since his assassination. This fighter in bare feet, navigating out, putting the charge exactly where it's supposed to be, executing his operation precisely just as the briefing from the commander showed. And we saw all of them put their hands in because there's 3 elements of this ambush. This a guerrilla action device is what you're seeing here. An improved guerrilla action device, stronger than the ones we've seen before because they're being made out of TNT from the unexploded ordnance. And then the tank comes just exactly like they said it would, and he's right in position to be hit by a Yasin, which is also built by the TNT. The charge in the Yasin is recharged by unexploded ordnance. This tank rolls over it's called a barrel bomb for the Palestinians. In Iraq and Afghanistan, they were called roadside bombs. These are devastating bombs that hit the undercarriage of the tank hull, and they could be as big as you could pack them. And then the next morning, this is the next day, this second Namr comes out in the exact spot that the first one did. So presumably these fighters are reaching these spots by tunnel and hitting these vehicles one after another. So just really an important layered operation in Rafah. We're still seeing command and control. Obviously, we saw the commander. You saw drone footage map being used for that operation. So those 3 groups all executed their task as planned. Let's go to number 2. This is also this is in Tel Sultan. This is the scene that you have gotten used to throughout this war. Within spitting distance of a tank, you get a Yasin strike that looks like it gets right in the turret gap there. That's what he's aiming for, at least. And no trophy active protection system going off on this round. It's far too close. The radar can't read through the destroyed buildings. But look at that. It's just military vandalism. There's no purpose to destroying a building that way. It gives fighters cover. All you're doing is making it impossible for humans to live there. You're not making it harder for the fighters. And this is part of an operation that there was in the field reports. This is one of 4 Merkava tanks that was hit in Tel Sultan in this area in this day of operations. There's 25 operations in Rafah since you last saw me. This is one of them. Let's do number 3 because this is interesting. We're seeing an M113. These are remote controlled armored personnel carriers that have been repurposed and are carrying munitions. So they're unmanned, driven by remote control. And you see here the fighter disables it with the shot to the top where its driving mechanism is, disables the vehicle from the top. And now these vehicles they hump. They're like donkeys. They carry explosives back and forth. They're using them to shuttle. And then we see another guy in Rafah doing the hand delivered. These guys are just too much. He just runs right out there in his sandals, slips it in the exact spot that they want, and then watch this detonation here because it's obviously packed with explosives. So they're shuttling mines. And I don't think the cameraman was expecting that level of blast because you don't know what's in them. You don't know if it's full of mines, which that clearly was. Some of them are used for mobile mortar units. And this is something that's new to this war. We haven't seen this be used before. And we saw them earlier in the war, and we wondered if it meant that the Israelis were sending in these poorly armored vehicles that had been destroyed spectacularly in the past. But these are remote controlled, and we've seen some of them burning. The resistance has destroyed a number of them, but these M113s are automatic, and this is something that the Israelis have. This is a new thing for this war. They also have some automatic D9 bulldozers. And look at this guy just coming out. That's a long distance to cover when there's drones above you, and he makes it back just in time for this pretty spectacular blast. So destroying M113s that are remote controlled. So another successful operation in Rafah. Let's do number 4 here tomorrow. This is a thermobaric warhead against a troop position, also in Tel Sultan. So we're going to see the classic soldiers in a window, identifying themselves clearly there with their triangles. And then we don't see the weapon fired, but you can tell by the blast that it's the Qassam-built tandem charge thermobaric warhead that's built by Qassam, which has an initial charge that can pump through the wall. And then the second charge is a fuel-air explosion that fills the room with fire in an instant. So it's a very deadly weapon that's being used to great effect throughout the war. And again, we're seeing medevacs here. This one is an egregious one. You can almost basically see what color the pilot's eyes are, but they don't touch them. They have a principle of not attacking. In the Quran, the Prophet said, "Do not attack a wounded person." I have questions about whether that applies to these helicopters. But I'll take that up with the appropriate sources at the time, because the time that it's relevant, because I don't think these helicopters are not. This is not a vanquished opponent, which is, I think, that what the Prophet is talking about is when you defeat an army. That you don't attack the wounded people when they're defeated. But this is ongoing battle. That helicopter pilot is part of a battle that is continuing. And I know I get a lot of comments from people saying, why do they not? Because that footage right there is just clearly within range of an @ghul. That's in range of lesser guns than an @ghul. And they don't touch them. They're on principle, no matter how. This was on Saturday after the massacre. That Nora described in the school massacre, and it's just the Zen-like patience of not, betraying your principles, these fighters' principles, and they're doing it. They're sticking to it, even though I think that's the closest helicopter that we've seen. So, yeah. Number 5 tomorrow. Let's go to also Tel Sultan. We got a 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐿 fighter here. You see him holding 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐿's primary anti-tank weapon, the Tandem 85. He's got the Shawaz 3, which is a Qassam Brigade's weapon. And this is a beauty, this video, because these two guys they're gonna place this explosive, and then in the house here, these two guys are gonna debate who gets to detonate the explosives, and you're gonna watch him set it up here. So he's gonna set it up at head height. We haven't seen this actually before, because he's got a tank right outside. He's gonna aim the shape charge at the turret of the tank. But essentially, what you get here is these two guys begging and pleading with each other to set off an explosive device head high. And they both want to do it. And the one guy says, I want a tally of soldiers. I want soldiers on my tally. And he's begging him, please let me take responsibility. Let it be my responsibility. And they're debating over it. And you can go to my Twitter account to hear the audio of it, because it's just there's a whole genre of these type of communications from the fighters. The fighters want to carry out the operations, right? The other side handcuffs teenagers, puts them in military uniforms, and makes them go into houses as human shields, like the most cowardly thing that you could really conceive of. And then these guys on the other side are debating who gets to pull the pin out of a homemade uh, weapon, shape charged weapon made of TNT that would blast all of the people in the room and kill them. And then we see here these fighters, after it, they've got a pizza here and they say, here's a triangle to celebrate the destruction of tanks and the liberation of Palestine. And that's a shout out to last week, if you remember, the Tel Al Brigade battalion. Sorry, the Tel Al battalion had those desserts after their operation. And so these fighters are talking to each other. They're communicating battalion to battalion. As we're going to see as this show goes on, they're communicating with the outside world. They're aware of their surroundings. They're not hiding in a tunnel completely separate from what's going on, as they're sort of told, you're told in the media that they are. They're involved in this work. They're deeply involved in the communications, fighting for their homeland. And that was just a great scene. So that's the resistance in Rafah.